Welcome to Engineering Scale Models presents another modeling video. This time we're going to be continuing our molding processes of making molds and casting up some parts, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what we are going to be casting. And I know a lot of people have Space Marines and they like to make Space Marines armies, and you want to magnetize stuff, and you always tend to run out of shoulder pads. Another thing is, if you have Space Marines and you want a rare chapter that is hard to come by, that they don't have a lot of shoulder pads for, this is going to show you how to make a bulk amount of shoulder pads for a more obscure chapter. Or you can even use this technique to make your own custom shoulder pads, and I will show you that. So what I have here is a sprue from the Death Watch Kill Team box set. It's just their 5-man box set. You get 2 of these sprues in the Kill Team starter set. These are specifically from the Kill Team starter set. And if you look right along here, right along there, across this whole top row is all the molded shoulder pads for all the different factions. There's even some more down here, like so. They have all the different factions on them, and you can make copies of these and use them on your Space Marines and your Death Watch. You want a whole entire Death Watch of, Space Wolves or Iron Hands or Bloods or Blood Angels or Dark Angels, Ultramarines. You can just make a whole bunch of shoulder pads. You can also use like the Death Watch upgrade sprue to make Death Watch shoulder pads if you want to just copy that instead of getting the sprue. You'd also be able to copy weapons and arms and things like that that you can use to magnetize and have a range of options. Now there's a couple different ways of doing this, and I'm going to go through the different ways to do this. Now, you can make a alginate mold from dental plaster, as I showed in one of my first mold making videos of the materials, and you can pour it into a dish, and you can press in the molding, and you can then make it a cast, and then this is destroyed. I used it to make an impression as a test mold. This was mixed up in a thick ratio, and it didn't work out very well. It didn't give me the detail I wanted, but subsequent research allowed me to figure out that I can mix this into a pourable consistency, and then you can pour it over a mold like the one that I have here. This is a mold. This one's going to be used for silicone. I'll show you that in a minute. And then you can make a one-time use mold where you can make you could pour some plastics if you only need a few, or you can make a more permanent mold, as I will be showing. And when you make a more permanent mold, you can pour in a liquid plastic. This is a tintable plastic, so you can make it whatever color you want. And it is a tiny mold, and will use very little bit of plastic, so one of those smooth-on trial size kits will last you thousands and thousands of shoulder pads. But as in this one here, because of the undercut on a shoulder pad, this section here, this little undercut section here, and it's going to be sitting in the mold like this, and I have to be able to pull that out, and there's going to be a chunk of silicone there, and I want something very flexible that's not going to tear and allow me to get the part out fairly easy. So what I'm using here is this Lumalite High Strength 3. It's extremely flexible. It is a liquid mold making rubber, and I'm using a silicone mold. Now you want to use this stuff by weight. It comes with a base, and it's a 10-to-1 ratio by weight. You can use volume, but when you're mixing such a small amount of silicone or rubber, you want to minimize waste, and you want to have it very accurate so that it is solid. Now this has a 45-minute working time, so you have plenty of time for the air bubbles to rise and pop, and it takes 12 to 18 hours to demold it. So like I'll make this mold today and then I will demold it tomorrow in the next part or subsequent part of the video. And then it has a liquid activator. You want to shake that up, you want to gently stir this, and we'll show the mixing and pouring process. But in order to do that, you need to find the volume of your mold. Now normally when you're casting something larger, you need to not only calculate the volume of your mold, but then you need to subtract the volume of your part. Since these are so tiny, they're not going to offer that much volume displacement in the liquid rubber, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to measure this out here, and then we can find out the volume. So I know these are an inch square on the outside, but on the inside they are, this one doesn't have millimeters. There we go. So on the inside they are about 2 centimeters by 100 centimeters. So 2 times 100 is 200 centimeters. And the height we're looking for it's about 1 centimeter tall. So we want another half a centimeter. So 1.5 centimeters. So about 500 cubic centimeters. No. 50 cubic centimeters of, because it's 10 centimeters by 2 centimeters. So that's 20 times 1.5 is 50 cubic centimeters. So 50 cubic centimeters of resin. And as you see, I have a lot of room. I could probably do another shoulder pad, or I could use this smaller mold to mold these. I may end up using this smaller mold and deciding that. So in order to find that, you need to, this is by weight, so it should tell me how much this does on the data sheet here. So then we got the high strength 3. So this mini kit will do 5.5 cubic inches. So it's about 5.5 cubic inches per pound. So I need to divide that by the cubic centimeters after I convert it, and I'll have the amount of resin. So that is that. I'll come back with all those calculations because the other molding I have is in cubic centimeters. So we will do that. Now another way that you can do a mold is we'll take a shoulder pad off here. We'll take this one with the eagle on it. Sorry if I don't know what faction that is, what Space Marine chapter that is. I don't know all the obscure chapters. So we will clean this up. You want to make sure the parts are cleaned up pretty well. You want to make sure they have a smooth base. So there we go. So dust brush in there. Make sure it doesn't have any dust on it. And what we can do is we can use this amazing mold putty, silicone mold putty. You mix equal parts of part A and part B. It's in these little tubs here. It's going to turn out yellow. You mix equal parts. I do it by weight. I have my little measurement scale here. I'll mix out little balls and make it equal parts by weight. And then you can push the dollop down, and you can push this shoulder pad in like so, all the way up to this line, all the way up, so it is along this line. So when you're going to make this 2-part silicone mold, you have this line right here is going to be your seam line. And then you'll have a seam line here, but that's really not going to matter. And then you make your first silicone part, let that go all the way up, and then you're going to Vaseline it, and then you're going to mix up another batch without taking this out, and you're going to squish the second batch on, make sure you don't get any air bubbles. Then after you do that, you can pop out, let that cure. It's about 20 minutes. Cure time demold is 20 minutes. So you get 2 to 3 minutes working time, demold 20 minutes. So in an hour you can make a mold for one shoulder pad, and then you can then mix up some green stuff or epoxy, Abe's sculpt. Abe's two-part epoxy, and you can fill the mold, squeeze the mold back together, pull out, open the mold back up, trim off a lot of the flash, then squeeze the mold back together, put a nice clamp on it, and then after the epoxy sculpt cures, you can pop out your shoulder pad and clean it up, and you will have a green stuff or epoxy sculpt shoulder pad. And that would how you can make one at a time, and you can end up making, you can make 5, and then you can put them in a mold like this, and then pour a mold where you can make them out of the liquid plastic, where you're making 5 at a time. Because this is 5 different shoulder pads, just because it's for a demonstration. But you could use this putty to make 5 copies of one of these, and then you could use those to, you make 5 copies out of green stuff or epoxy sculpt or whatever you want, and then you could make a larger mold and pour it. Then you could use the liquid plastic and make 5 at a time, 10 at a time, however you want to arrange them in your mold. So, but I highly recommend a highly flexible strength silicone rubber for this, because of the tear and the wear that it will get popping the shoulder pads out, because you're going to have to be using a pair of pliers. Probably need one of those pliers to pop them out, or just push them from the bottom. So I am going to get this all set up. I'm probably going to move these to the smaller mold, so I use a little bit less of the rubber, because it's not expensive, but it's not cheap either. And I have a lot of molds I plan on making for some scale model ships and things. I just want to demonstrate it with these shoulder pads, so you guys have an idea of how it can help you in making your Warhammer armies and things. So I'm going to be back with some more stuff. I'm going to get ready to make these molds. I'm going to cut a mold box to make them look nice, and some plates so they can clamp together. I'm going to get all those materials together, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start making some molds. I'll be back in a bit, guys. Okay, I'm back, and the workbench is extremely messy because I'm using all this stuff. I just want to go over a few things. A lot has happened since the last clip. So, as I was waiting for some wax to come in for this next step of the silicone molding of a single shoulder pad, I was debating on just pressing it on there and then pressing on another another piece after I released it. And then I was coming, well, why don't I make a reusable mold box that I can make multiple copies of? I can make multiple molds of different shoulder pads. So this is what I came up with. I'm going to show it to you here. It's got these little keys in there, and I'll show you how I made them. This is just a basic box. I can put the shoulder pad in there and show you what that looks like. See, put the shoulder pad in there. I'll be mounting it to the middle with some wax, and then I can pour that mold, and it'll key. So when I flip it over and I do the top one, the top half, it'll line up perfectly, and I'll be able to cast me some shoulder pads out of green stuff or milliput or epoxy sculpt, Abe's epoxy sculpt, things like that. So the reason why it's taken me, a day to get this far is because I don't want to glue this shoulder pad to the bottom of this box. And my white balance is horrible on this white styrene, so you have to bear with that. That's why I have the side camera going. I could stick it down with clay, but I need to really push in the silicone. So what I'm going to do is I got some carving wax that is for making jewelry. I got a variety pack on Amazon for 15 bucks. Comes with different hardnesses. And this is moldable. You can sculpt this, you can file it, you can cut it, you can sand it, and it comes with a whole bunch. I plan on using it. I'm going to be rolling over some bubble wrap. I plan on using it for making molds and things like that. So it's nice to have. So, oh, then I also got me some sticky dental wax for sticking down the stuff. But right now I have marked out a square here to mount the shoulder pad to. So I have this super teeny tiny jewelry saw because I don't need a big one. I use this for hacking apart my miniatures when I'm doing some kit bashing. So I'm going to cut this out here. Cut from this side here. I would assume having a larger jewelry saw would make this. Plus, I don't even know if this has got the right tip in it. I use this for making really fine cuts on models, so it might not be the right tip for cutting wax. So we cut our piece out here. Now, this is all new to me. I haven't tested any of this before, as always. So I could smooth this out with some sandpaper. So I'm going to grab my sanding dish here that has some sanding sponge in it and try that. Definitely not using that. So I will be back in a minute with some sandpaper. Okay, I got some sandpaper, got my little box different grit sandpaper. I got some 180 here. I'm just gonna cut me off a little strip. Cut me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. It's not sponsored by Kit Kat. When you're doing this, I'm assuming you don't want to heat the wax up and melt it. So, just like if you're sanding plastic too vigorously, you could heat it up and it'll get gummy. I'm assuming this will do the same thing. What you want to do is you want to get rid of any undercuts and lips that could be present on the wax, because that will make it difficult to remove the mold. Round the edges a little bit. I was going to use my hobby saw to cut this wax, but then I remembered I had the little mini jewelry saw for kit bashing, so I figured I'd try that. And it worked. Well, I think that's what you're supposed to use in the first place, is one of these jewelry wire saws. So this is going to go in here like so. I'm going to stick that down with some wax like that, and then this shoulder pad is going to stick on there with some wax like that, and then I'm going to mix up the two-part putty, and then I'm going to squish it down. Now, there is an issue here that I feel could be a problem, and I'll talk about that real quick, and then I'll tell you how I think I can solve this. Now, I may be doing this the first time, but I am an engineer by trade, and I have made many wax castings of parts. I was a prototyping engineer, so I've made many. Yeah, I can't close a container. Wow. I have made many wax castings of prototype parts, so this is just on a very tiny scale, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And this is the wax set I got, Philo Wax Professional Kit, 14 piece, 3 hardness grades, from Ferris. It's on Amazon, so gives you a little chart on what you want for the color. So looks like the green has a shore hardness of 57, so it's harder than the blue or purple. Oh, that's what I wanted to use. So that's how that's going to go in there. Now, when I push that down in there, it being a silicone, it's going to have a lot of trapped air, and that air is going to need to escape. Some of it will be able to escape through the corners, but I need it to escape out downward. So if I was pouring this with a pourable silicone, I would not want to do this, but since I am doing a putty, I could put holes in the side here, and I am going to put 2 holes in here, like right here and right here. I'm going to drill through so the air has somewhere to escape, and probably on the corners on each side. So I'll mark that right there. About like that, but you can see those black dot. Now you can't see them, so I'll do it. So it's right there, right there, right there. So just let me show how this one. See right there where the black dots are? That's where I'm going to drill 4 holes. I'm not going to drill large holes. I'm going to drill tiny holes with my pin vise. I'm probably not going to be able to find. Oh, found it. Look at that. I moved some stuff around to do my gaming content, and I haven't got fully organized yet, but I'm working on it. So, let me get my pin device out here. First, I should get a drill. I'm going to do 1mm holes. Actually, you know what, today, I wonder if it's time to break out the Proxxon drill press and drill these holes with that. I believe that's what I do. I want to be back. I'm going to break out the Proxxon so you can check out that drill press, and I'm going to drill the holes with that. I know it's overkill, but I want you guys to see the Proxxon in action. Be back. Okay guys, I'm back. I got the Proxxon drill set up here. You can see on the side camera that I got my table. I'm not going to be using the table. I got it all set up. I got an 1/8 inch collet in there with a 1mm drill. And then I got my workpiece in a little Proxxon bench press table vise. I marked and I center punched the holes I want to drill, and I set my depth on my drill press to the depth I want, really so I just don't go down too far. Now I slowed it down. I'm only going about 1800 RPM. I don't like to go super fast. So we're going to drill this out. I'm sorry if the noise gets crazy loud. But here we go. just drilled my holes. Let's turn that off. Now we have 4 holes in there to let the air out. They look good, and I'll show you a little tip here. First things first, you want to take this drill bit out immediately. Not only is it sharp, but it is fragile. I just take off the top there, loosen up the drill bit, put it right back in my case, clean off the debris, of course, because there could be like chemicals on whatever you drilled that could weaken the drill bit or do different things to the drill bit. I'm going to leave the 1/8 inch collet in there because it's my most common used. I'm going to put my vise back. I'm going to put my lid back on. And I'll show you a cool little trick on this right here in this camera. I have in this drawer here a cool little tool. This is a micro deburring tool. It has a little pointed tip on it, and it is perfect for getting into these little holes here, like especially holes that are drilled by those little PC board drills, printed circuit board drills like I was just using. It gets in there and it puts a nice countersunk edge on those. These are fantastic. I got these sets at my old job. It came with a tri-pointed scraper, and it came with a little micro deburring tool, and we bought the kits when they were on sale for the micro deburring tool, because we would go through those like water, and I ended up keeping all the countersinks because we could never use those, and now they come in very useful for me here, and my boss gives them to me because they have no use for them. So we have our 4 holes drilled. You can see that in there. I'm going to get this stuff put up, and then we are going to move on to the next step. Okay, let's talk about these keys I made. I know they're hard to see in there. They are triangular, and how I made those was with some plastic styrene. I used this Plastruct triangle stock. It is 0.08 by 2 millimeter styrene triangle. It is catalog number MRT-80, and then I used some evergreen styrene HO scale 4x8. That is item number 8408, and I'm going to show you how I make up a quick keys for this. Now, if you're doing something small like this, you can get away with making quick keys. Now, the styrene in itself is triangular, so it's going to make a nice angular key, but it's not quite as thick as I wanted it, and this scale HO 2x4 or 4x8 fits it perfectly, and you can glue it together with no issues. So basically what I do is I come up here on the chopper. I will set whatever length I need for a key. First, I'll clean up my end here. And then measure out what would I need for a key here. So about a little under an inch. So we'll go right there. Lock down our fence. We'll put our stock in there, under an inch. Cut that off. And you can make multiple keys this way for multiple molds. Keep all your keys the same length. Put our fork. Okay, so I don't need that anymore. I'm only making the one key because I already have the keys made for. But you can make both your keys this way. Just cut the stuff up and out of the way. And then what I do is I just take this here and I squeeze it together. Take some, to me, a quick set, extra thin, line them up, and just, I mean, this is very key, just a little bit, because otherwise it's going to run on your fingers and you're going to get it everywhere, and you're going to make imperfections on the plastic, and then you take the other side, line it up, and just a little bit, guys, just a little bit. You can reinforce it in a minute. So now that I got that together, give it a little squeeze, make sure it's lined up everywhere, and everywhere's lined up. There's just a little bit of a lip on there, just a little bit of a lip. It's hard to see with the camera and the white balance, but that is good to go. I'm going to sit it on my metal block because the styrene glue won't stick to that, and I'm just going to reinforce that real quick with some more, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to let it sit on that metal block and it won't stick to that. So we got our box done, so we got our holes drilled. We're going to let that dry, and I'll show you how to clean it up so they're nice and smooth. And then gluing it in is just pretty simple. I just use some styrene glue. They're not perfectly square and straight. Yes, that does bug me, but you know, this is, I slapped this together in a couple hours yesterday. This is my first, I mean, I normally use silicone molds, but I wanted to come up with something for the putty, and the silicone was too flexible, so I came up with this rigid box idea. I may have to reinforce the sides, but I think I can push that putty down in there pretty well. So let's move back on to the, I gotta put my tools away. Try to get my tools put away as I use them. Now, as I said before, I am using this amazing super mold putty. It's a two-part, and you can also use something like they got polyplastics, silicone mold part A and B. You mix up equal amounts. They have that. You can also use this stuff. This is like umagumi or something. Blue Stuff, Green Stuff World makes some stuff called Blue Stuff. You heat this stuff in hot water, it becomes a gooey like taffy, and then you can press that into the mold, and then you can flip it over and make your second half, and we'll talk about the second half later. And then you can also use a double boiler system and heat up some composite mold and pour that in there. Just be advised, if you do that, you're going to have to plug those holes we made. But with the silicone putties, this is going to be a good two-part mold when we're done. So this is dry. I'm going to let it dry a little bit longer though. So if you guys want to see me make it with this reusable mold stuff, let me know in the comments below, and I will use this mold to do that. But I mainly want to make a silicone mold. So, and I'm probably going to use the polyplastic. So now let us take a look here. We have our wax block that we want to mount in the middle here, right there. Now, could super glue that down. And then use the hot wax to stick the shoulder pad on. And I filled the shoulder pad with some water-based plastilina, sulfur-free clay, just so it's smooth and it won't have any undercuts. And then we'll dig that out when we go to do the second half of the mold. So I am going to put a dab of super glue. I'm going to use my Loctite gel control, and I'm going to first I'm going to find a pair of tweezers that I can grab this with. Yeah, that's not going to let me put it back down. Okay, so we're going to grab it with a pair of forceps. We can sit it down. Okay, so I'm going to put me a little drop of some a little drop because I want to be able to get this off. Of course I drop it. Okay, so I got that centered in there, so I got me my little wax block in there. So now this wax block won't be in the second half. This is just to raise it up off of the ground so I will get a decent parting line, and the second half of the mold will have a little bit more material to clamp down on. So, and we're going to make the second half somewhat like this, just I haven't decided yet. So now we can take some wax and I haven't tried this stuff yet. I was recommended this stuff. This is original Yeti Thorough Wax. It's for dental use. This is sculpting wax gray, and then this is cervical wax red. It's definitely for dental work. So they say that the red is stickier than the gray. So we'll find out. So that's what they say. And then I have a Max Wax pen. It basically gets red hot. Place some of this on here. Alright, now I'm going to stick this down, hopefully. And that did not stick. Alright, I think that's down there now. Okay, so we got that stuck to the wax. This thing gives off smoke and it stinks, just to let you know that. Have a fan exhausting that out. So now we have our shoulder pad on there. So now we are going to why is that not going on now? Oh, it's a little pop system. That's cool. Wax back now. I also gonna try to carve some wax into my own custom shoulder pad one day. So now let's get back to our mold key. We have this is dry. We have a little bit of a seam. I just take a sanding stick there and I knock that down so it's smooth. This is a flexi-file course. Flexi-file course here. Just make it nice and even, and then I would glue that down, and that is how you make your mold key. So you only need these on one side of the mold because the silicone is going to wrap around that, and that's going to lock our molds together. Now, all this stuff should release from the silicone putty, but I don't want to take that chance. So what I want to do is I'm going to get my polypropylene board. I'm going to put this down here, and I'm going to get a super cheap soft brush. sell, I get these sets of art brushes. They're soft. You get them for 80 cents at Walmart for a 10-pack. There's tons of different sizes in there. They're fantastic for this throwaway stuff. They're even cheaper than cheap brushes. So here's what I got. I got some PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, water-based mold release. Now I recommend a water-based mold release so you can clean your part with water, soap and water, and you can be able to paint it. So if you use a silicone spray release or something that has an oil in it that is designed, don't use anything with silicone because silicone sticks to silicone. But if you use a mold release that has an oil-based, you're going to have very difficulties trying to paint your models afterwards. So we're going to shake this up and we're going to open it here. It's got a stopper in it. So now I'm trying this different than a spray on because it's difficult for me to get outside to spray it. So I'm trying this here just as a mold release. Make sure you get it on that clay because you don't want that clay sticking. Brush it on all the nooks and crannies, just like painting, guys. Now, the most important thing is you want to make this, you want to let this dry, and it says 15 to 45 minutes. And I'm doing this early in the morning because, we're homeschooling now because of the virus. So I am doing this early in the morning so we can then do my son's homework and our schoolwork. And then by the time we make a good headway on that, this will be dry and I can come back to you guys and get this mold done. You want to make sure you get your keys real well, get it all brushed in there. It's got a green tint to it so you can kind of see where you've been. In the corners, brush it all around. Now this is water based, so it can be rinsed off with water. So it is an alcohol, so it's going to evaporate, and that's how it's going to leave behind the mold release film as it evaporates the alcohol from it. So okay, without further ado, we are going to mold this. I have it in the mold box. I have it on some wax. The mold release has dried. I put some little feet on it so I'm able to press down the silicone putty and allow the air holes to vent the air through the bottom. So I'm going to get my scale out. Now you could just roll up equal size balls, but I am going to measure it out, and I am going to use gloves. These are nitrile gloves, not latex gloves. That's important when you're working with silicone. Silicone can react with latex, so use the nitrile or vinyl gloves. I don't like vinyl gloves. So I'm going to take some part B here. I don't need much. So take this here. Probably going to have a little bit more. And then this will also tell me how much I need for this mold by weighing this out here. So I have 5.7 grams. So I'll put this right there. So I'll sit it up top there. 5.7 grams. I need 5.7 grams of this stuff. .3. There we go. That'll work. So I'm going to take these two. I'm going to close up my mold, and then I'm going to mix these up really well. And I got to work kind of quick here. I'm just going to push my scale to the side, get this all mixed up to a uniform color. I have about 5 minutes, and I'll be able to demold this in about 30 minutes. So get that all mixed up, just like mixing green stuff. you want to get it all mixed up really, really well. This is very soft, which is nice. Some of the putties can be a little tougher. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to push this into this mold. I'm going to really push it down. I probably should have mixed up 7 grams of this. So now, I want to just make sure I got that mold captured. I'm going to look at the bottom and see if I see any the stuff lined up on my holes here, which I do. And I'm just going to continue to work it for a little bit longer. Now this is a curing, so it doesn't dry, it cures. So you're going to have to let it go for the full 30 minutes. It says 30 minutes on it. So now I got that all cleaned up, and I am going to write on the side of this in my pencil here. Hopefully right on. So 12 grams, so we'll say it was 5.5, say, so that's 11 grams. We'll say we should do 14 grams. 14 grams, so 7 and 7. 7 plus 7. And then we know next time we'll have enough to fill this mold. Because I designed this box to hopefully be able to use it multiple different times, so I'll be able to use it for different stuff. And then I'm going to get rid of these silicone gloves. And it is 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to give it an extra more than 30 minutes. I'm going to give it a couple hours because there's no reason not to. I'm not in a hurry. So I'm going to be back later. I have my mold. It's just going to sit here and cure on the bench, and we will take a look at it. I'll come back and take a look at it. If it fails, it fails. If it works, it works. Just to go over, I use the Polyplastics silicone mold putty. It's very soft and pliable, and I'm hoping it will make a nice 2-part squish mold if I make a nice box for it. So that's going to do it. I'll be back with the demolding, and then we'll move on to the second half. Thanks, guys. Okay, about 6 hours has passed, and I am going to attempt to move this from this mold here. I zoomed in a little bit. Wish I had that a little bit smoother, but I'm going to use this thin palette type knife to get in here and pry this mold free. Now this should be a pretty durable mold here. Get that in. I'm hoping I don't have to cut this mold open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other flat tool here, and I'm going to come into this corner. I'm going to pop this out. Yeah, it's popping out. Come to this side and just work it out gently. And if all goes well, the shoulder pad will still be embedded in there with the wax, just like that. So my mold release is stuck to it, and as you can see, it pulled the wax off of the super glue that I used to glue the block of the wax down with. So now I have a beautiful mold there, nice and keyed for my next molding, which is going to be the second half of this mold. And what it'll be is it'll be kind of like a negative and positive casting, where I can just take this wax out and then I'll make another mold box. I'm not going to do that on camera. Mold boxes are pretty easy. It's gluing some styrene together. I'm already working on another one here. And I can make a mold box and then squish the resin on here, and should be good to go. Now I should be able to pop this off, which I am able to. And as you can see, I have my shoulder pad embedded in there, and what I want to do now is I want to get that clay out of there. And I want to do it without damaging the mold or moving the shoulder pad. So just pull this clay out of here. Now that clay's got wax in it, so I'm just going to throw that away. Clean this all out there like that. As you can see, I sealed that really well. This mold film is on there. Yeah, I was wondering how this PVA was going to hold up without using the spray aerosol kind of mold release, and it seems to work pretty well. See if there's any distortions in the mold from the mold release. This all cleaned up in there. And we'll be ready to mold that guy. Looks like it twisted a little bit on my wax block, but you know, I was pushing it down pretty hard. I'll use a little bit less pressure on the next one. I plan on making another, using this mold to mold other shoulder pads. So I plan on doing that, and I think I'm going to stick this down with wax instead of super glue. So I think that will stop that, and then it'll be more reusable. So I'm going to keep that mold. I'm going to make another box for this, and I'll be back and we will work on the next part of this. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, I got my second mold box made here. I'm just going to clean it with some alcohol. Just want to get the dust and debris off of it. It's basically a styrene box. Let me tell you, I'll tell you what thickness I made it here in a second, guys. So this is 1.5 mil styrene, and I made the base from 2 mil styrene. So the excuse me, the bottom is 2 mil styrene and it's 1.5 across the top. And for this little mold, I know it's 2 on the bottom. I believe it's 1.5. Yeah, so 1 on the bottom, 2 on the bottom, and 1.5 on the sides seems to be a good holding for it. So I'm gonna put my mold in here. As you can see, it fits in there just like that. And as you can see, it's a little loose in the mold, and there's some gaps in there, and when I go to push in the silicone, it's gonna seep down in there and it's gonna bond. So what I want to do is I want to take some clay. Now, get my pastel and clay here. I'm going to roll a snake. Roll out a snake here. Cut the end off. And cut it right about there. Put it in there. I'm going to cut another one for this other side. Push this down in here, so it's not working the way I want it to. I need a different tool. More. So I got all my tools. I'm going to get my silicone spatula out. I'm just going to give me a smidge of water here. Just a smidge of water right there. So I can work this clay a little bit easier. You don't want any clay in your actual molding strips or your keys or anything, so be careful of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this in here. It's kind of tricky to do this part. I want to make sure that whole gap is sealed up there. So the putty is very soft and it will squish where you don't want it to squish if you don't take care to fill the gap here. And then you'll have it bonding to the side of your mold. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to fill the gap, because I plan on using this mold box to actually mold my shoulder pad in, so it'll clean out and all that stuff. I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope you enjoy me getting back into modeling. I'm going to be doing some videos like this because it's going to get into some projects I'm working on that I'm going to be showing on camera. So I got that all sealed up. Now I'm going to come back in with my polyvinyl alcohol, shake it up so there's no dust on my mold, and I'm going to coat that, but I don't want any pooling inside the shoulder pad. I'm going to be very careful that I don't get any pooling inside that shoulder pad. I want to make sure that I get it on the mold and the silicone very well. I want to make sure that it is on the silicone, because I don't want that silicone to bond to itself. Especially in the keys, because you know, if there's a little bit of an undercut there, these are going to be sealed up and you're not going to get those out. So I'm putting a little bit onto the shoulder pad, but not very much. Mainly putting it on the silicone and the walls of the mold. That was very helpful last time of getting the mold out of the box. And once you have these molds, these mold boxes made, you can make a shoulder pad mold very quickly with the putty. And I'm going to show you a different way and a different material in another video. Maybe will come after this one, about using a different material that's not silicone, that's reusable. So we're going to look into that. Just need to change this setup a little bit. Alright, so now that needs to dry for about 45 minutes, and I'll be back and we'll be squishing the putty in there. Okay, I know this is getting to be an extremely long video, and I apologize, but I want to make sure I share all the steps with you. This has been dried. We're going to turn our scale on, and we are going to mix. This mold took 14 grams in total, and it's about half. So we're gonna mix 10 grams, 5 of each. So we're gonna mix 5 of each part. So let's see how that works out. So 5.3 of that one. Put the lid back on this. And we'll know roughly after we do this how much it takes to finish filling this box. Then we'll write it on there. So 5.3. Look at that, right on the money almost. So we got our 2 parts of our putty. Turn off our scale. Alright, so we're going to take the 2 parts again, and we're going to mix these up real good. Like I said, this is a very soft stuff, so I recommend, if you're going to make molds with this, using a mold box would be very, very useful, because you can really press it into the mold. So you got about 2 or 3 minutes of working time, so you can mix it for a good 45 seconds to make sure it's all mixed up and it cures properly. Alright, so I'm going to roll it back into a ball, and we're going to take it, and I'm going to stick it in there like that. Make sure I push it down, and I'm going to take my popsicle stick, push it down, so that was right at the level. Make sure this is all down in them keys, down in the mold, all that good stuff. So remember the working time, so you don't want to spend too much time getting it in the mold there. So I'm going to take this. See, it's already starting to stiffen up some. So just probably a smidge under 5 grams would have filled this up all the way. Or 10 grams, I'm sorry, 5 of each. side. And we have our second part of our mold. We'll get rid of our gloves, and we will come back in a couple hours, well, a couple seconds for you guys, and we will be good to go, and we will start mixing up some green stuff to put inside there and making a shoulder pad. So it's going to do it, guys. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, the mold has set up. It's been about 2 hours, and we're going to come in here and we're going to attempt to pry this up here. Put that in there. Peel this back. That mold release seems to be doing its job. Well, the bottom mold has already been released, so it should pull out of this styrene box pretty simply. Do just a little bit of cleanup on this. Now let's see if we can pry this out here. Don't want to damage the mold. See, the styrene gives just a little bit. Okay, so now we have the mold box is empty. And we have our clay here. Now we should be able to pull apart our mold. There we go. We have some air bubbles in the bottom of this silicone here, but it doesn't appear we have any air bubbles on our molded part. Let's pull our part out of here. See that, and as you can see, that bird head is molded in there, and then this mold will push back together. We'll put some green stuff in there, and we will have a shoulder pad. So let me clean up this mold a little bit here. Just trim off some of that. Some of our keys are a little bit underformed. Probably should have worked it in there a little bit or made some vent holes for air to get out. But I'll remember that for the next casting. This is my first time using the polyplastics. So I've always used the cornstarch and silicone caulk method, and molds were only good for like 1 or 2 times. They weren't for making multiple parts. So let's get this mold release off of there. Okay, so what are we going to do? How are we going to fill this mold, and what are we going to fill it with? Now, my ultimate goal is to use this mold to make copies, to then put 4 or 5 of those copies into a mold box and pour in a pourable silicone to make a one-piece mold that I am able to then in turn pour liquid plastic in to make 5 of these at a time. Now that is my overall goal here. Now this second half mold is not the high quality that the first half is. First half of the mold is a extremely higher quality, and I'm not sure why that is. I think it has to do with the fact that I had vent holes in the bottom of it to allow the silicone to vent out. And what I'm going to do to help keying this, I'm going to remove these little bumps here so they don't interfere with the mold going back together, because they're going to be a little tricky to line up. So that goes off. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my polyvinyl alcohol again. And we're going to use green stuff to make a mold for this. Take my polyvinyl alcohol, my 2 molds, and we're going to use this mold box again. But first, I'm going to get my polyvinyl alcohol that I shook up. A little bit of water in here for my brush. I just want to put some of this on the part where the green stuff is going to be touching. Just a thin layer. I don't want any pooling. I just want a thin layer where the green stuff is going to go. That's all I want. And then in here, the actual shoulder pad is going to be molded. Green stuff shouldn't stick to the silicone mold. I just want to make demolding it, and I want to demold it a smidge early so it's not rock hard yet. It's still a little bit soft, so I can fix any seam lines or things like that and whatnot. Just mold releasing that key. So then I'm going to come in here with a pointed Q-tip here, and I'm going to soak up this polyvinyl alcohol that is pulled into the recesses of the emblem so we don't have a sloppy cast. Now, you may not get this done on the first try. You may not get a perfect mold on the first try. So, like, I know I got a first mold pour perfect, and I'm not real happy with this second mold. The keys are a little air bubbly. You can see there's tons of air bubbles. I'm not happy with that. I might try to find a way to vent out that air. But for now, I'm going to let that polyvinyl alcohol, PVA, I'm going to let that dry. Clean my brush a little bit. Brush back on the bottle. I rubber band it on there so I have it, so I don't use that brush for anything else. So now how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put this bottom mold back into this mold box here. Clean out all this bad clay. Clay's garbage now. Get all that cleaned out, get all that mold release out of there. Because we don't need any of that mold release in there because the green stuff's not going to get on the mold box. So I'm going to put my bottom mold back in there. So put my bottom mold back in there, and then I'm going to get my vise that I have here. Vise. Looking for my key for the vise. That's it. Alright, so I got my vise, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the stuff in the mold, and then I'm going to clamp it with this piece of plastic over it as the lid, and the mold is just a smidge taller, so it will go in there like this, and I'll be able to squish it down in order to get the molding that I am looking for. So I'll be able to get in there and squish that down and get the molding I'm looking for. Now let's mix up some green stuff here. Now it's not going to take much green stuff at all. I mean, it is not going to take much at all to do this, and if you use too much, you're going to get tons of flashing. So I am just going to pull this little bit off here. I'm probably not going to even use all of this. So this green stuff's a little bit old. I normally don't like this strip stuff. I'm trying to get rid of it. So now I'm going to cut out the middle here. Cut out the middle. I'm going to take my two parts. I'm going to get me a little bit of water. Dunk the two parts in the water, and now I'm going to mix these up real good here. Until I get that nice green color. A little bit of water helps it not stick to your hands and slide and stuff. Now, when I've molded things in the past, I have used green stuff to cast molds and that blue stuff, reusable stuff. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it down in that spot right there, and I'm going to realize I'm probably going to need a lot less of what I have. Put that in there, and I'm going to press that in there, and I want that to not have any air bubbles. And I'm going to take my mold here, and I'm going to press that together just like that, and then I'm going to pop that mold, that top half back out. I'm going to pop that top half back out and make sure that I have a good mold, that I have enough stuff in there. It appears that I do. So I'm going to take my piece of plastic here, and I'm going to place it in my vise. I'm going to give that a squeeze. You can use clamps or whatever to give that a good squeeze. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it over, squeeze it in the other direction just to make sure I'm getting good even pressure. Nice, and in the middle, just giving it a good squeeze, and then I'm going to clamp it in there, and I'm going to come back in about 2.5–3 hours, and we're going to pull that part out and see what it looks like, and see if we have a copy of our bird head shoulder pad for a Space Marine. And that's going to cut at the end of it for this video. We'll pull out this mold, see what it looks like, and then I'll do a troubleshooting video. I'll do a different troubleshooting video, and you guys can see different ways of using different putties or different stuff in between, like epoxy sculpt or things like that. So maybe you should make a couple different ones in a little faster format. So we'll be back. We'll pull this out in a few hours, and we will see what it looks like. Okay, and we're back. We're almost at the end here. I had to change the clamping fixture. I didn't like the pressure the vise was giving me. So let's check this out. This should be good. The test piece is firm. I'm not a fan of how long green stuff takes to cure. It is literally the next day. Alright, let's pop this out of here. Yeah, we got some flash, which we knew we would have. Just gonna stretch the mold here like this, and we're gonna get our tweezers. And pop out our shoulder pad. And there we go. See, there is an eagle shoulder pad. We just got a little bit of cleanup to do. We can do that with an X-Acto knife. It's still a little soft, but there you go. You have a Space Marine shoulder pad. You get this all cleaned up, and then you can cast 4 or 5 of them in a mold like this with silicone pourable, and you can start making your own shoulder pads. And like I mentioned earlier, you can use wax to carve your own shoulder pads and cast those, and have your own custom squad of Space Marines with their own unique chapter emblems and things like that. So I know this is a long video, and I hope you enjoyed it on making a 2-piece mold for casting parts out of green stuff. Thank you all for watching. You can visit me at these social media sites, and you can also support me on Patreon to help further the channel and help me make more things and more videos like this. Thank you so